They've been beaten. Not with fists, but with something else.
It was a horrible way to die.
Look at me. Look at me. Who did this to this elderly couple?
I did not want to kill, didn't think about killing nobody.
I don't know who did it. It wasn't me, though.
We weren't going to back down.
There's something more to this.
There was something going on there.
Someone put them up to this.
There's no doubt she would do this again. She needed to be stopped.
What happens if they don't pay you?
He has to pay me.
She's a mastermind of this process. Do not with us.
Y'all scared me. Oh, Mama. I want you.
They touched a nerve, and they know it. I spent my career closing murder cases. But I'm not the only one who answered the call. It takes a rare breed to solve the unsolvable, to catch a ruthless killer, to find justice for the dead. That's what it takes to be an American detective.
Arlington 911.
Hello?
This is Arlington.
Yes, ma'am. My mother-in-law house, the window is open.
Okay, so you just found it open. Is your mother-in-law home?
I don't know because nobody picks up the phone.
And you don't know if they're hurt or not, correct?
I don't know, ma'am. I'm afraid.
So I got dispatched to a welfare check saying I can't get a hold of my mom and dad. When I got to the scene, an entire family was out there saying, please help, please help. The family had said that they tried the door and it was locked. So I made the decision to go in through the window. It's dark in there. I grab my flashlight and I'm calling out Arlington police, and there was no answer. There's no one in the immediate living room. There's no one in the little kitchenette area. The only thing that I haven't checked is a bedroom. I open the door and I see the bloody handprint, which led me to know that there was something in the closet that I didn't want to see. There was no preparing myself for what was in that closet. Just a bloody massacre.
Death is always ugly. Violent death is even more ugly. It is profoundly evil.
My name is Byron Stewart. I'm a detective with the Arlington Police Department. My major was good journalism, interview and interrogation, learning the art of the investigation. It's very important to handle high challenging cases. It was June 10th, 2012. I was at home. I was on call, and so therefore I had to respond.
At the crime scene, Stewart is informed by the uniformed officer what she has discovered in this apartment.
I was initially told that there was a couple found. These were elderly victims, Lone Win, and then Hung Lee.
And Stewart goes inside to look at the bodies.
Right away, I could see that the apartment was in disarray. There were CDs thrown about, furniture was thrown about, but the amount of ransacking was just so random here and there that I had my reservations. Entering the bedroom area, it was a horrible scene. The victims are covered in massive amounts of duct tape. I could see that the duct tape was wrapped around their face, around their ankles, heavy duct tape around their hands. They were pretty much helpless.
I haven't seen that level of violence. This case was something that stayed with me for a long time.
That's the thing that's going through my mind. How horrible was it for them?
There appears to be blunt force trauma to the heads of both victims. They've been beaten, not with fists, but with something else.
They were fighting for their lives and ultimately succumbed to their injuries.
Then they discover that these killers have apparently spent time in this place.
I noticed that there was a table and it had a plate on it. And on that plate appeared to be a marijuana cigarette. And these pills that were crushed, what's actually happening?
It just didn't look right. There's something more to this.
One thing that we saw was a beer bottle that had a bandana around the bottle of the neck. That didn't make any sense. Then I had to look at the demographics of the victims, and they did not look to be the type of persons that would be smoking marijuana or drinking beer. They could be the suspects who stayed there while these victims were dying.
Could that be why they were shoved in a closet? Of course. Why look at this dead person while we're trying to have a good time?
Once I walked through the crime scene, I came back outside and the family was there. I did ask that they come back to the station so I can take an official statement from them.
So Stewart needs to speak to the family member who called 911. His name is Chow Tran, and the dead people are the parents of his wife.
Chow's wife didn't speak that much English, and so Chow Tran quickly became the spokesperson for the family. They had already been told that their parents and loved ones were deceased, but they did not know the details.
Cho is your first name, right?
Yes.
And Cho, the way this works is, we have to figure out who would do this, and why they would do this.
The most important person in a homicide scene is the victim. Tell me about the victim.
He said they stayed to themselves. They were very family-oriented, and that they just did not partake in anything that would warrant that.
Any known enemies or anything like that?
I don't think my mom and dad have any,
yeah.
I met them in a Vietnamese community. They're very nice people. Everybody loved them. They would not hurt a little fly. Long and Ho came here, they worked hard.
They immigrated here from Vietnam in order to make a better life for themselves.
They established a sewing and garment business in Arlington, Texas. They hire Chow Tran, because he's a relative, to be the general manager.
My mom's the owner of the shop, and I go to the company, I get work.
They built this business up, and by all accounts, they were, the American dream.
Chow told me that they did specialize sewing for costumes and things of that nature that you would see in amusement parks.
Chow Tran goes on to report that they were able to achieve a contract with the Disney Corporation, and it's going along just fine. 2007, 2008 comes around, and there is a world recession. Disney cancels their contract, and now this family is all of a sudden in deep trouble.
Did they work yesterday at the shop?
No,
the shop was closed?
It was closed for a whole week. They've been so slow.
Okay.
This was an old school Vietnamese family. You or I might say, okay, we need to go and talk to a financial planner. For them, it was like, okay, we need to go talk to somebody to figure out how to get this curse taken off our family and our business.
He truly meant a curse in the spiritual sense of it, and he was looking for ways to try to lift this curse. There's a community that believes that that exists and that that can happen.
They even enlisted the aid of a spiritual advisor, but it didn't help.
During my conversation with Chow Tran, I tried to get as much information before the offense took place.
So Stewart asked the standard question of Chow Tran, when's the last time you saw your parents-in-law? Well, last night,
Chow said that it was his birthday. And so the victims were at Chow Tran's house before this offense took place, and they had dinner to celebrate that.
We eat, and when we sit together, we play cards until 10 o'clock.
When they came over, everybody was happy?
Oh, everybody's happy, and we joking around.
The story he told was this was just a normal night where we're getting together and having food, and then they went home.
Do you understand when you have to look at family members first and to see if anybody has some type of motive within the family?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So no one would have a reason to want to harm them in your family at all?
What's harm me? And kill them?
Yeah, kill them.
Oh, no.
There was nothing that indicated that there was any kind of foul play from the family at all. After I talked to Chow, I attended the autopsy to try to get some type of cause of death.
they inform him they did not find identifiable fingerprints, but with that much duct tape, it is unknown what lies beneath it.
I looked at both victims, and I could see they had blunt force trauma to the head. But according to the doctors, it's not the type of blows that would kill them.
What did cause death was asphyxia. 35 feet of duct tape had been used. That's an enormous amount of duct tape.
It was a horrible way to die, to be trying to gasp for air and you couldn't get it because this duct tape is blocking your airway. Then that got me thinking about the crime scene. One thing that we saw was a beer bottle that had a bandana around the neck. I was familiar with the blue bandana and thought, well, maybe this is a gang member or something like that who left this.
There are gang activities where a calling card is left. The beer bottles are wrapped in light blue rags, a calling card of the gang.
There's an array of different cultures of gangs, Vietnamese gangs too as well. Gang members can do anything. Anything is unpredictable.
Could a Vietnamese street gang engage in violent death? Oh, without doubt, they can certainly do that. Do not with us, or this is going to happen to you, only maybe even worse. After the Nguyen's were found brutally murdered, Detective Stewart has to wonder, is this a street gang seeking a street cred?
This bandana was a light blue type color. And we did have a gang unit at the police department at the time, so they did give us a possible gang affiliated with that type of color.
So gangs certainly are involved in home invasion, robberies, burglaries, breaking into people's homes. I mean, they're not above any of that.
In Vietnam, there are gangs dating back thousands of years. But the modern Vietnamese gangs are just as violent.
In this area, Arlington, during the 80s and early 90s were the worst place for the Vietnamese gangster. There is a gang problem.
If it was a Vietnamese gang, they would probably know the culture of storing cash in the house and not having cash in banks.
Majority of the Vietnamese people don't trust the bank because banking system in Vietnam before the war, you put the money in there, if something happens, you have no money. That's why they come in here. They keep their cash in the house.
Byron was determined that he was going to solve this case. So he's going to have to talk to gang members.
What he needs is concrete physical evidence that would tie someone to this crime scene. That's when Stewart gets a break from the crime lab. They inform him they did not find identifiable fingerprints, but they found something even better. Whoever rolled the marijuana cigarette licked the paper so it would seal, and left DNA behind.
The first thing they would do with the sample would be to run it through a database and see if it hits anybody.
In this particular case here, we did not get a DNA profile back on the person. It was disappointing.
The fact that the DNA profile is not attached to a name isn't that meaningful. Maybe he's never been arrested before.
We had no choice but to contact known gang members that we knew in the area, so we started talking to them. Some of them were uncooperative, didn't want to talk to us, took a lot of convincing.
Some gang member, they speak good English, but they play like I'm dumb, I don't know the language. They don't want to talk.
Some of these known gang members, they gave their DNA as a way of, you can check me, I have nothing to hide. We swabbed a lot of people. So all those samples were ran, and each one of them came back negative.
I think Byron had already sensed that the scene was staged. Those victims had no ties to any type of anything gang-related.
That bandana was meant to lead us to gang members or to start interviewing gang members, and it worked. We did. So then the question is, why would someone do that?
This is violent and very nasty. It is profoundly evil. So Stewart is wondering where he's going to go next when he gets a phone call from an insurance company who want to know what he knows about the death of these people.
The insurance company needs confirmation that the death actually occurred, the manner of the death, was it a suicide, was it a homicide?
Insurance companies are very thorough. They're not going to pay anybody, and they don't have to. So Stewart asked the insurance person, who's the beneficiary of the payout?
They told me that Chao Tran was a beneficiary. The insurance policy totaled around $1.8 million. This did catch my attention because of the amount of money.
$1.8 million is change your life money. Now that gives Stewart 1.8 million reasons to have a conversation with Mr. Tran. It's apparent to Stewart that there are a number of things Chao Tran never told him. Why, in heaven's name, would Nguyen's have a policy worth $1.8 million? So he needs to speak to Tran and see what's going on with him.
When Byron asked him about having life insurance taken out on the victims, I believe the explanation that was given was it was for the benefit of the business.
Chao assured me that the insurance policy was on the family because if something were to happen to the primary owners, which in this case it did, then they could carry on with the business.
This explanation is perfectly reasonable. These people have built this business from the ground up. To them, it is their legacy for their family, and they want to protect it.
Having insurance in and of itself is not a concern of mine, so that proved again to be a dead end.
Over the next few months, progress in the case comes to a stop. All leads have been exhausted.
And we kept waiting for a possible DNA profile. We just don't have the person that it belongs to. I truly wanted closure with this case. It was personal.
Yeah, it bothered him. No one wishes for that case to go cold. He did everything that he could. He was determined that he was going to solve this case.
I kept pictures of both victims on my desk as a reminder. I would get other cases, but this case still was that important for me that we got closure. We maintained contact with Chao and his family. We gave them updates. The insurance company had paid off on the policies. Something's got to give.
Nearly 3 years after the Nguyen's were found murdered and stuffed in a closet, Stewart gets a phone call.
I remember getting a call from one of my supervisors who said, hey, we got a DNA hit. And so I probably said some choice words as far as, are you sure you're reading what you have? And that person assured me it was from a cigarette from a 2012 case.
That was the break that he was looking for.
We were back on track as if it happened yesterday.
Stewart inquires as to who this person is. It matches the DNA. He is a young man named Willie Guillory. He was arrested for stealing a horse, which in Texas is a felony.
And it's such a crazy way for the case to break, right? You know, the kid steals a horse and his DNA goes in the system.
Stewart has him transported by the PD in Houston 250 miles to the city of Arlington.
All right, Willie.
Willie was placed into an interview room, and I'm watching him, and he's really relaxed at the time.
Can you explain to me what's going on first?
Sure. I'm the detective here in Arlington. And can I make sure I have some of your information first?
I just kind of got a feel for who he was, and then I go into explaining our offense and what happened in 2012.
We're working on a homicide that occurred back in 2012. We're questioning you about it, Willie, because we believe that you were part of this offense. Do you understand what I'm saying? So tell us what happened.
I really do not know what happened because I have never been to Arlington at all.
And his body language changed. He's not as relaxed as he once was when we initially started talking. And I know I'm on the right track.
I'm telling you, your DNA was at the scene of this elderly couple back in 2012.
But
now let's try to figure out.
I don't know why y'all keep blaming me. I was 16.
Well, let's figure out first how your DNA got there.
I would never commit a murder, never will. I don't believe in killing people. I really don't believe in doing any of that.
He's very, very uncomfortable at this point, and he starts to get emotional.
Look at me, Willie. You need to feel comfortable telling us who did this offense.
I don't know who did it. It wasn't me, though. It just put a lot of stress on me.
They touched a nerve, and they know it. And they are on him like a new suit.
Y'all scared me.
He starts asking for his mother. He becomes almost a 15-year-old Willie now, but he's a grown man.
Mama, I want you.
Well, I need you to get up, man. Come on.
Those were real emotions of a person who's been caught.
I'm here with you, man, okay? I'm not going anywhere.
With Willie's demeanor and how he was acting, there's just no way in the world that I thought Willie, by himself, carried this out.
These bodies have been shoved into a closet. When someone is fighting for their life, one person alone is unlikely to be able to overcome that. There's more than one suspect in this event. There has to be.
The patience of Byron to get to this point, look, we know you didn't do this by yourself. Tell us who else was involved with this. And I think that's what gave Willie an out eventually.
During the course of talking to Willie, he does mention the name Bobby Guillory, which he says is his uncle.
Willie says he's afraid of Uncle Bobby.
He eventually says that Bobby was the ringleader of this offense that started a domino effect of everything.
Tell me more about Uncle Bobby, Willie. You seem to know a lot about him. DNA places Willie Guillory at the crime scene, and he places his Uncle Bobby there, too. It's enough to get a warrant to drag Bobby Guillory into an interrogation room.
I'd probably rehearsed that whole interview in my head for 2 hours. You know, I anticipated the first hour he's gonna deny. The second hour would be me confronting him with facts.
Okay, Bobby, now, of course, I need to explain to you everything that's going on, right?
Yes.
You still want to talk to me?
I'll talk to you.
Okay. Where we are right now and how we stand right now is this. Willie has been arrested and he's been charged with capital murder.
I hit Bobby with, are you going to truly let him take the whole rap for this?
I don't look at you as a monster. I look at you as a person who I believe you want to make amends. You're just scared.
At this point, he looked, in my opinion, like a defeated man.
Now, I'm just asking you, Bobby, what's going through your mind as far as on Willie's behalf?
I knew that he was ready to tell the truth.
Now, just wanted Willie to come with me so we can find this money fast and go.
So Bobby says he heard the Nguyen family kept a lot of cash at home. You heard from who? And all of a sudden, the Nguyen's come home.
It was dark, and we started fighting, tussling, and stuff like that.
And the next thing you know, these people are dead. That does not equate to wrapping 35 feet of duct tape around their heads until they suffocate.
So what was the purpose behind the duct tape then, in your opinion?
Just to stop him from hollering.
It was clear what Bobby was telling Stewart was not everything. He still understood that he needed to downplay his role in this.
He drove from Houston to the Arlington area to commit this offense. Where's the connection?
Something's going on here. Someone put them up to this.
I believe there are other people involved. You have to decide, just like Willie had to decide, how much defense you're trying to do for them. Who benefited from these people's death?
He had to make a decision whether or not he wanted to tell the truth, and that was not happening at that time.
Bobby refuses to name any additional players. So Stewart turns his attention back to Willie.
Who are they, Willie? Who did this to the elderly
I just heard about it. There was some other people.
Willie started opening up. He come to the point where he knew we had him.
Finally, he admits that they were doing it on behalf of a woman. What woman would that be?
I know it's hard, Willie, so just tell us.
Do you ever shit paper in the pit? That's all I know about it. Daphne.
Daphne? Okay. Okay, is Daphne one of the persons?
Daphne was the ringleader of it all.
He gave up this lady named Daphne. That doesn't mean anything to me at the time.
I don't think he knew all the intricate details of Daphne. So we came back to interview Bobby.
Okay, so Willie and I have talked very extensively on everything, okay? But I do know that Daphne started this process.
That's when he was like, you know what? If I'm going down, everybody's going down with me.
Well, Bobby, explain to me from the beginning how Daphne approached you and how the situation happened.
They knew her because she would go there to do her business for whatever business she was doing with the lady. You know, the witchcraft or whatever they do. You know, and the lady owed her a lot of money.
Okay.
Daphne said she wanted them dead because they owed her a lot of money, and she promised to pay them if they would kill them.
You got there. Did you use the key to get in?
Yeah.
Who can get you guys a key to that apartment?
Daphne.
Well, then one would have to say, how did Daphne get the keys?
From him.
Did she mention his name?
He says there's a Vietnamese guy that worked with them or something.
Chow Tran is the son-in-law.
He the one give Daphne that key.
He did?
That's how she got it.
And that was this complete and utter shock. He lied to me, and that he broke that level of trust that we established in the beginning of me thinking that he and his family were victims in this.
So no one would have a reason to want to harm them in your family at all?
And kill them?
Yeah, kill them.
Oh, no.
Well, no, that my boy, is very interesting. Bobby and Willie Guillory tell a very interesting story. A Vietnamese spiritual advisor named Daphne Wright asked them to kill Nguyen's with the assistance and help of the son-in-law, Chow Tran.
Here's a man that we've stopped by his house on a number of occasions, assured him that we were still working on this case. Now we learned that he had possible involvement in this. And I did make the decision to go by the home of Daphne Wright, but we also got a search warrant for her home. And we wanted to collect any evidence that we felt was relevant to the case.
One of the things Detective Stewart needs to prove is that Daphne Wright and Chow Tran actually know each other.
A portion of her home was an office for her clients to come and meet her.
There was something going on there that we wouldn't normally see in a person's house unless they're casting spells.
So we go in there and she have all these ledgers, all these names, how much money they owed her, how much money was given, if they still owed her.
Daphne's spiritual gift was being a priestess to the point where she can remove curses from your business. She kept books and records of all of her dealings with every person that she came in contact with.
Everything is right down to the details.
It was an elaborate scheme that she had going on.
And then they see it. There is a record of Chow Tran and his picture in her records.
I really wanted the opportunity to talk to Daphne to learn more about her ability to remove curses, but I also wanted to learn more about Chow and how this all came to be and what her role was in it.
Let me just ask you this, just to clarify what we talked about. You do know Chow Tran?
When we first moved in here, that's when he contacted me. For his visit, people come to me because they need help.
She's giving us this talk about how she can remove a hex and how she can grow your business if your business is not doing well.
But if you are superstitious, you believe it to be true that the Daphne Wrights of the world are the only ones who can speak to the deities and influence the outcome of your life.
She's the one that benefited out throughout this whole process. Money is her motivating factor.
She charges enormous amounts of money for this, $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 a session.
That got me thinking about the conversation I had with Chow. And Chow saying that we felt our business was cursed.
Did he pay you?
He has to pay me.
Okay. What happens if they don't pay you?
Well, I can't even tell what's gonna happen. But usually it's not gonna be a nice thing to happen. I don't have to do anything to them. Things just happen on its own.
She told Byron, if people owe me money, I'm gonna get my money one way or another.
Give me money because I like money. And you're a dumb shit, so I'm gonna take yours first because you're just too easy.
We eventually made the decision to get an arrest warrant for Daphne. She was taken to jail at that time, and I attempted to interview her.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it. Definitely. Daphne, Detective Stewart, do you remember me?
Yeah.
Daphne Wright might appear to you to be just some suburban soccer mom. But when you look beyond the surface, she had her own little racket going on. If you didn't pay, you knew something bad was going to happen to you.
You can tell she was very angry at the time. She was defiant.
I'd like to know what's going on, because the last time when you came down to see me, I didn't even know what is really going on back then.
I explained to her what the nature of the arrest was for.
If I have to make any statements or anything, I like to have my lawyer present before I do anything.
So now the spiritual advisor needs a legal advisor.
Come with me, ma'am.
Now he hopes to talk to Chao Tran, see if he can break him.
We're going to confront him about everything that we had learned thus far. But instead, I got a call from an attorney. And I knew where we were heading at that point.
So now they're out of business. They're not going to get a statement, and they need one. Daphne Wright is the mastermind of this process, the architect of the entire crime.
The case against Daphne was going to be, a very difficult case to prove. It's a completely circumstantial case. And the risks were high that Daphne could walk. And so the thought was, maybe if we subpoenaed Chao Tran and brought him in, then maybe we could somehow get him on the stand. In order to have Chao Tran testify against Daphne, we had to give him immunity.
It was a very hard decision. There's no doubt in our mind that she would do this again. She needed to be stopped, and if we had to use Chao for that matter, it's a lesser of two evils.
I spent a lot of hours at the police station with Stewart, combing over evidence and strategizing, all the way up to the start of Daphne's trial.
During the trial, Chao Tran says, over the course of a few years, the family had racked up a debt of $280,000.
And so Chao had to come up with some kind of way to pay this money.
Chao Tran has a marvelous idea. What about the life insurance?
Chao knew that there was an insurance policy that they had been paying on for years.
Both Chao and Wright determined that if they were dead, the insurance could pay the debt.
So now who are we going to get to commit the crime? Because Daphne wasn't going to do it. So she knew this guy, Bobby.
And what kind of situation is Bobby in? He's in the same situation that Chao's in. Financial problems.
She thought if she dangled $10,000 in front of him, he would do anything she wanted. So Bobby Guillory accepts the assignment, but he doesn't think he can handle two people. So he contacts his dim-witted nephew, and Willie's dumb enough to go along. Chao told Daphne the apartment would be empty until 10 p.m. and gave her the key. The night of the murder, Chao Tran lured his father-in-law, Nguyen, over to his house to celebrate his birthday. All part of the plan to give the Guillorys time to enter the apartment.
In that time frame, you have Willie and Bobby who just sits in this apartment. They were getting ready to attack him, and that's exactly what they did.
And when the Nguyen's came home, the Guillorys were ready, and the attack occurred.
And then they taped across their face and their mouth and eyes to the point where they couldn't breathe. They had to die because insurance won't pay to living people. Willie and Bobby start staging their apartment to look like it's been ransacked.
They staged the scene to make it look like it was a gang home invasion gone bad.
They might have gotten away with it until Willie made a fatal mistake.
Willie couldn't get the paper to stay together, so he licked it and transferred his DNA onto that cigarette. Had he not licked that cigarette, we would have never known who did this. The link that Chao Tran had gone, he knows that he needs his in-laws to come over to the house at a certain time, and he needs them to leave at a certain time. I often think, what is Chao thinking when he sees his in-laws leave the house, when he knows he's looking at them for the last time? I was on pins and needles with Daphne's trial. We just didn't know which way it was going to go. Didn't know how Chao's testimony was going to go.
the end of the day, we convict Daphne Wright of capital murder. That sentence is automatic, life without parole. Willie and Bobby were both charged with capital murder. Willie, we made him an offer. Willie got 13 years on murder, and then Bobby got life without the possibility of parole. Child's not getting any charges based on the evidence that we had. It still sits with me today as I'm sitting in this chair thinking about the fact that Child Tran got away with murder. And that sort of sticks in my craw, and it probably always will.
I can only imagine when it comes to Child, the amount of guilt that has to be bestowed onto him. He has to live with that every day.
This case shows the sheer lunacy of superstition and conspiracy. That people believe in falsehoods gets them grievously hurt, and in some cases even dead. It's unfortunate. It is the way of the world, but it is unfortunate. On the next American Detective.
Who murdered a woman found in Old Boysville Juvenile Detention Center. You know who the killer is.
Oh, trust me, we have proof.
Something's not right about this.
This is where you're reminding us.
You can't put your finger on it yet, but you know it's not right.
In the quiet sprawl of Gilbert, Arizona, where the desert horizon meets a community built on the steady promise of suburban prosperity. A single Wednesday evening in May of the year 2020 fractured the lives of a family forever. It was just before 5:30 in the afternoon when Alicia Cordova, standing in her kitchen, was interrupted by her 5-year-old daughter, Capri. The young girl rushed in from the hallway, her face pale with the confusion of a child witnessing something incomprehensible, claiming that something was dreadfully wrong with her father. Her mother reaching for the electronic device that had been facilitating a video call between her children and their father. 40-year-old Nick Cordova heard only the chilling silence that followed a sudden, jarring sound. What Alicia witnessed through that screen, the sudden disappearance of her husband into a chaos she could not yet name, has served as a haunting catalyst for a 6-year crusade for justice. A journey defined by unanswered questions, a mounting pile of circumstantial evidence, and a desperate plea to the Gilbert Police Department to shed light on a tragedy that remains unresolved. The narrative of that day begins with a frantic emergency call placed by Alicia to the authorities as she relayed her location in Scottsdale and the frantic details of the video call. Her voice carried the weight of a mother shielding her children from the visceral reality unfolding in Nick's workplace at 511 West Guadalupe Road. She described the harrowing scene, the movement she sensed through the camera, the absence of voices, and the terrifying sight of a dark glove or a weapon. Despite the rapid response of law enforcement, the scene they encountered upon arrival was one that would baffle investigators and devastate a grieving widow. When officers reached the offices of Gilbert Air, the heating, ventilation, and air conditioning company Nick owned alongside his partner, Dave Sweetman, they found the premises locked from within. The initial encounter with Dave was, by all accounts, highly unusual. An officer, approaching the storefront, was met by a man peering through the blinds, identifying himself as Dave, who then handed the officer a bloodied firearm through a narrow opening in the door. Inside the office, the scene painted a grim portrait of a violent struggle. Nick Cordova lay on the floor unresponsive, with a fatal injury to his left cheek. The room bore the scars of a desperate fight, a desk pushed from its original position, items scattered across the floor, and multiple bullet holes marking the walls and furniture. Among the debris, investigators noted a human tooth and a potato with a hollowed-out section, sparking intense, albeit unsubstantiated, speculation regarding the use of makeshift suppressors, while the office of Dave Sweetman appeared largely undisturbed. The discovery of an empty handgun case and magazine within his desk drawer raised immediate questions. When detained and questioned at the scene, Dave offered an account of 2 men in masks, which he identified as health-related coverings common. In May of that year, entering the building under the pretense of selling Freon, he claimed they held him at gunpoint, demanded his money, and struck him on the head, rendering him unconscious before fleeing. This narrative, however, was quickly complicated by the discovery of over $1,000 in cash in Dave's pocket during a pat-down, directly contradicting his claim that he had handed over all his money to the assailants. During a subsequent, more formal interview at the station, his story evolved. He described a scenario where he had briefly stepped away from the door and turned back, only to find the intruders already confronting Nick. He maintained that he heard a struggle and a gunshot, but remained incapacitated by the intruders. Violence, only regaining consciousness when the FaceTime call from Alicia forced him to move toward the lobby. Investigators, reviewing surveillance footage from the building, observed two suspects arriving in an older model red and silver Ford pickup truck, concealing a firearm within a hollowed-out box. The footage captured Nick attempting to flee the office, only to be struck down in the lobby, a moment visible on the camera, while Dave's presence remained largely off camera, his involvement a persistent enigma. The backdrop to this tragedy is a complex web of business tensions and personal anxieties. Alicia, reflecting on the timeline, noted that in the year 2017, Nick had invested in Gilbert Air, drawn by the promise of entrepreneurship. However, the business relationship with Dave Sweetman, a man whose history was marked by various legal entanglements and a reputation for being difficult, proved to be a source of deepening instability. By the spring of the year 2020, the strain had become palpable. Nick had confided in Alicia his growing fear that he was being watched and his discovery that significant sums of money had been removed from the company accounts without his consent. Perhaps most chilling was Nick's revelation that Dave had suggested they take out life insurance policies on one another, a proposal that mirrored a similar attempt made to the previous co-owner, who had wisely refused. Nick's intuition that his partner might seek to benefit from his untimely death transformed from a dark joke into a terrifying reality that occupied his thoughts in his final weeks. The investigation into suspects. Despite the clear footage of an individual entering a convenience store just minutes after the shooting, has yielded little in the way of concrete results. The footage, remarkably clear, showed a heavy-set man, yet no identification was forthcoming. The silence from the department and the redaction of over 200 pages of the case file have only fueled the frustration of those who love Nick. Alicia, who insisted from the very beginning that Dave's account demanded further scrutiny, has spent years navigating a legal and administrative labyrinth. She encountered further betrayal when, following Nick's death, she discovered that signatures had been forged on insurance documents, a discovery that led to years of contentious litigation. While a settlement was finally reached in the year 2024, the emotional toll in the absence of closure remained absolute. Today, as Nick's story continues to be told, it serves as a testament to the resilience of a family determined to keep his memory alive. Despite the loss of the business, which closed 9 months after the shooting and the subsequent emergence of new entities run by his former partner, Alicia remains steadfast in her pursuit of the truth. She utilizes every platform at her disposal, from social media to public records requests, to press for answers. The community of Gilbert, often caught in debates regarding the transparency and efficacy of its police department, looks upon this case as a symbol of the broader need for justice and accountability. Every interaction with detectives, every promise of a breakthrough, and every subsequent disappointment has only fortified Alicia's resolve. The reward for information, now totaling $20,000, stands as a lingering invitation for anyone with knowledge to come forward. For those who knew Nick, the man who raised his siblings, the dedicated father, and the ambitious entrepreneur, the journey toward justice is one that cannot be abandoned, for it is not merely about finding a perpetrator, but about honoring the life of a man whose spirit continues to inspire those who refuse to let his. story be buried in the silence of redacted files and empty promises. The persistence of the case is a reminder of the fragility of safety and the necessity of community. Vigilance. It is a story of a woman who, in the face of insurmountable grief, has become a pillar of strength, refusing to let the shadows of uncertainty obscure the light of the man she loved. As the investigation remains open, the call for transparency regarding the evidence, the ballistics, the DNA, and the financial trails becomes more urgent. The lessons drawn from the tragedy of Nick Cordova are deeply personal, yet they resonate with a wider audience that seeks to understand how such a life could be extinguished with such impunity. The dedication of individuals like Alicia, who tirelessly advocate for truth, stands as a beacon of hope against the darkness of the unknown. Her life, once defined by the quiet joys of a family unit, is now defined by the courage it takes to stand before the world and demand that the truth be revealed. In this, the legacy of Nick Cordova is not one of victimhood, but of an enduring, powerful quest for justice that refuses to be silenced by the passage of time. The path forward remains difficult, and the answers may remain elusive for now, but the commitment to finding them is as strong as the day the first call was placed. The community stand with the Cordova family, united in the hope that one day the truth will be brought to light, and the peace that has been denied for 6 long years will finally be restored. The complexities of the case highlight a critical need for thoroughness in investigative practices, ensuring that no detail, however small or seemingly irrelevant, is left unexamined. Whether it is a history of financial dealings, the nuances of the surveillance footage, or the patterns of behavior that preceded the incident, every element must be weighed with the precision that justice requires. As we look at the year 2026 and the ongoing efforts to uncover the truth, we are reminded that a case is never truly closed until it is resolved with the clarity that the facts provide. The call for an Attorney General's review into the handling of police records in the region adds a layer of systemic concern that further underscores the importance of this case not only for the family but for the integrity of the judicial process in Arizona. The dedication to this pursuit is a reflection of the best of the American spirit, the refusal to accept injustice, the willingness to ask the hard questions, and the unwavering belief that truth, no matter how long hidden, must eventually come to light. Through all the trials and the waiting, the core of the story remains a man himself, Nick Cordova, whose life is celebrated through the relentless pursuit of those responsible for his absence. The journey is far from over, but with every step taken in the light of truth, the hope for justice grows stronger, reflecting the deep-seated belief that the memory of a loved one is a light that no crime can ever fully extinguish. As the search for information continues, the collective hope of the community remains focused on the day when the puzzle pieces finally align, bringing the long-awaited resolution to a family that has waited far too long to be made whole. The narrative of Nick Cordova is one that challenges us all to be more observant, more compassionate, and more determined to ensure that the fabric of our society is held together by the threads of justice and integrity. It is a story that, while marked by tragedy, is ultimately defined by the power of the human spirit to endure, to hope, and to fight for what is right, ensuring that no one is forgotten and that the truth is always worth the struggle. As this investigation moves into its 7th year, the urgency only intensifies. Every piece of evidence, from the forensic details to the testimonies provided, serves as a building block toward a future where the events of that May evening are no longer shrouded in mystery. The advocacy of those who stand by Alicia, friends, family, and a public that has been deeply moved by her story, forms a chain of support that transcends the boundaries of the local community. It is a reminder that in the face of adversity, the bonds we forge and the truths we pursue are what define our humanity. The focus remains, as it always has, on the 2 suspects who fled in that red and silver pickup truck and the deeper questions surrounding the business and financial motives that may have set this tragedy in motion. The dedication of the investigative team, coupled with the ongoing pressure for transparency, creates an environment where progress, however slow, remains possible. The story of Nick Cordova is a call to action for all of us, urging us to remain vigilant and to never lose sight of the fact that behind every case file is a person, a family, and a life that mattered. The commitment to this case is a testament to the fact that justice, while it may be delayed, must never be denied. It is this unwavering belief that propels the story forward, driving the pursuit of truth with a focus that is as sharp as the need for closure is profound. In the vast landscape of American stories, the one that tells of the fight for Nick Cordova's justice occupies a significant place, representing the resilience and the enduring quest for the right thing that defines the very best of us. As the search for the truth continues, the community remains an integral part of the process, a silent but ever-present witness to the resolve that will not be broken. The hope is that through this continued effort, the answers will be found, and the peace that has been sought for so long will finally find its place in the lives of those who have been most affected. The journey is one that reflects the complexities of our legal and social systems, and in its telling, it challenges us to strive for a higher standard of accountability, transparency, and justice for all. Ultimately, the resolution of this case will be a defining moment, one that will provide not only closure for the family, but also a sense of restoration for the community at large. The path is marked by challenges, but it is also marked by the strength of a promise kept to honor the life of Nick Cordova through the relentless pursuit of the truth. As we look toward the future, the hope is that the mechanisms of justice will work as they are intended, clearing away the fog of uncertainty and delivering the accountability that has been sought for so many years. The impact of this story extends far beyond the borders of Gilbert, Arizona, serving as a reminder of the power of individual voices in the face of monumental challenge. It is a testament to belief that even when faced with the most difficult of circumstances, the pursuit of justice remains a noble and necessary endeavor, with the support of those who care. The story of Nick Cordova will continue to be told until the final chapter is written, a chapter that will be marked by the arrival of truth and the fulfillment of the promise that his life and the struggle for his justice were never in vain. The unwavering spirit displayed by those who love him is a guiding light, ensuring that the fire of justice continues to burn bright. It is this light that will lead the way through the complexities of the investigation and toward the eventual realization of the truth, providing the answers that have been sought for so long. As the community continues its support, the message remains clear. The fight for justice for Nick Cordova is a fight for the values that we hold most dear, and it is a fight that will continue with strength and determination until it is won. The legacy of Nick Cordova will be one of a life cherished and a truth that, through the efforts of many, was finally brought to the light of day, ensuring that his memory lives on in the justice that he so rightfully deserves. The tragic passing of Laura Sweetman remains a haunting chapter in the history of Gilbert, Arizona, a narrative defined not only by the questions surrounding her sudden death, but by the profound silence that has persisted for 13 years. In the early morning hours of December 9th, 2013, a dedicated pediatrician and cherished community member was found unresponsive in her home, leaving behind 3 young sons and a community desperate for answers. As we peel back the layers of this cold case, we find a story that speaks to the resilience of those who loved her, the complexities of navigating personal turmoil, and the persistent, quiet hope for truth that continues to ripple through those who remember her warmth and her work at the Phoenix Children's Hospital. The context of Laura's life in 2013 was one of immense personal pressure and, eventually, a courageous pursuit of independence. Laura, a brilliant pediatric neurologist, had been navigating a tumultuous marriage with her husband, Dave Sweetman. For those who knew her, the picture-perfect image often presented to the public masked the reality of emotional and verbal struggle. By April of 2013, the discovery of a life kept separate from her own acted as a catalyst. Laura had planned to quiet dignified departure, intending to establish a new life for herself and her children. However, the events of April 21st, 2013, forced those private struggles into the public record after an altercation led to the intervention of the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office. Despite the existence of protective order and the subsequent separation, Laura's focus remained steadfastly on the well-being of her children and her patients, embodying the spirit of a professional who, despite her own inner clouds, remained a light for the families she served. The investigation into Laura's death, as reflected in the available records, has left many of her closest friends and family members with more questions than answers. When she was discovered by her former nanny, the scene presented confusing details, including a dislodged safety gate at the base of the stairs and an unlocked back door, elements that have fueled speculation and concern among those who knew her daily routines. The official autopsy, conducted by the Maricopa County Medical Examiner's Office, concluded with an undetermined cause and manner of death. This classification has stood as a formidable barrier to closure for a decade, as the lack of definitive answers has prevented the case from moving forward, leaving the community to navigate the uncertainty of what truly transpired that night. The tragedy is further compounded by the shadows cast over the investigative process itself. Reports from the time indicate that the medical professionals involved in the autopsy and toxicology analysis face significant scrutiny regarding their professional histories and past conduct in other jurisdictions. These revelations have understandably led family members and advocates to question the integrity of the initial findings. The frustration is palpable, yet it has not broken the resolve of those who seek to honor Laura's legacy. It is a testament to the community's strength that friends and former colleagues continue to speak her name, ensuring that she is not remembered merely as a case file, but as the vibrant, dedicated woman who wore colorful clothing to her final farewell, reflecting the light she brought into the world. As we reflect on this story, we are reminded of the importance of community advocacy and the collective voice in ensuring that justice remains an accessible pillar of our society. The story of Laura Sweetman is not a call for sensationalism, but a request for transparency and a thorough, professional review that respects both her memory and the need for truth. The resilience shown by her family and the friends who continue to seek answers is a powerful example of the American spirit, one that refuses to succumb to despair even when faced with institutional silence. In honoring Laura, we recognize the inherent value of every life and the necessity of maintaining rigorous standards in our systems of justice, ensuring that no individual story is ever pushed aside, regardless of the passage of time. The quest for clarity regarding her final hours remains a poignant reminder of our shared responsibility to look out for one another and to pursue the truth with both unwavering persistence and profound compassion. The story of Stephanie Casper is one that has lingered over the landscape of Racine County, Wisconsin, for more than 50 years. It is a narrative woven with the threads of a young life cut short, a community fractured by an enduring mystery, and the relentless, often exhausting, pursuit of justice. To understand this case is to step back into the summer of 1969, a time when the world seemed poised on the edge of monumental change. Yet in the quiet corners of the Midwest, a darkness emerged that would haunt a family for generations. On the afternoon of Wednesday, July 9th, 1969, the sky over Racine County was heavy with an overcast mist. The temperature hovered in the low 70s, a typical damp Wisconsin day. Along the banks of the Root River, near an old, condemned steel trestle bridge on 8 Mile Road, a local family had gathered to pass the time fishing while exploring the riverbank. A 10-year-old boy made a discovery that would forever alter the course of local history. What he initially perceived as a strange, lumpy pile near the water's edge turned out to be the dismembered remains of a teenage girl. When the Racine County authorities arrived to process the scene, the gravity of the situation became clear. The remains were found in several piles along the riverbank, partially concealed by mud and wrapped in a collection of torn brown paper bags and dated copies of the Milwaukee Sentinel. The precision with which the remains had been dismembered suggested an assailant who possessed both patience and a disturbing degree of anatomical knowledge. Investigators observed that the victim's torso and left leg were missing, and despite an exhaustive search of the river, these parts were never recovered. The scene yielded several enigmatic clues: a brown leather shoe, burned paper matchsticks, and an older-style military jacket with all patches removed, found several feet away. The medical examiner's analysis indicated that the victim had died approximately 24-2, 48 hours before being discovered. The cause of death was determined to be a neck wound, specifically a severed artery, inflicted with a precision that bordered on the surgical. By the early hours of July 10th, 1969, the Jane Doe had been identified as Stephanie Casper. She had been 18 years old, a recent high school graduate with a part-time job at Mark's Big Boy, a popular restaurant in downtown Milwaukee. Her 18th birthday would have arrived the very next day. Stephanie was remembered by those who knew her as a kind, hard-working young woman who genuinely cared for the younger children in her neighborhood. She had been harboring a secret relationship with a 22-year-old serviceman named John. While John's family had embraced her, Stephanie had kept the romance from her own parents, fearing their reaction to the fact that John was black. This concealment, combined with her habit of occasionally staying at friends' houses, initially caused a delay in the family's realization that she was missing. The investigation into Stephanie's final hours revealed that she had last been seen leaving her shift at the restaurant around 12:30 in the morning on Sunday, July 6th. She had been carrying a brown leather purse, and it was presumed she might have been headed to catch a bus. The search for evidence soon extended into the city of Franklin, approximately 6 miles north of the riverbank, where residents turned over items that had been discarded along a rural road. These included a gold clutch, a blue appointment book, a Social Security card, and various photographs. The discovery of these items suggested that someone had moved methodically between Milwaukee and Racine County, shedding evidence along the path. As detectives worked the case, various theories emerged. Rumors circulated regarding Stephanie's father, Charles, and his potential involvement, though investigators found no credible evidence to support such claims. The focus shifted heavily toward the environment of the restaurant where Stephanie worked. The workplace was described as a chaotic social sphere, with reports of staff misconduct, making it difficult for investigators to filter through conflicting accounts of the men who knew Stephanie's schedule. The case remained cold for nearly 2 decades, characterized by fleeting leads and jurisdictional complexities between Milwaukee, Franklin, and Racine County. In 1988, a new lead emerged when a woman came forward alleging that her brother, Michael Bartelt, who had been a cook at the restaurant, was responsible for the murder. She suggested that his supposed trip to Hawaii in 1969 had been a fabrication. Although investigators revisited the case and interviewed Bartelt, the limitations of the era's forensic technology and the lack of physical evidence meant that no charges could be filed. Years later, the emergence of advanced DNA testing offered a glimmer of hope. In 2009, forensic scientists analyzed pubic hairs found on a towel inside a box of additional remains, discovered on a farm in 1969. While partial DNA profiles were obtained, they did not yield a match in the national database. In the decades that followed, several suspects, including a man named Wilbert Mackey and others linked to the case through anonymous tips or family suspicions, were tested and ultimately excluded. The investigation took a profound turn in recent years when the lead detective, Lieutenant Brian Van Sack, encountered a connection that bridged the gap between Stephanie's case and other unsolved murders across the nation through a shared interest in investigative reporting, A link was proposed between the methodology of Stephanie's killer and other crimes, including the case of Kristen David in Idaho. This ongoing work, though hindered by the complexities of bureaucracy and the passage of time, continues to drive the Racine County Sheriff's Office toward a resolution. While Michael Bartelt passed away in June of 2024, and the primary focus has shifted, the search for the truth remains a priority. The story of Stephanie Casper serves as a poignant reminder of the resilience of a family and the dedication of those who refuse to let a life be forgotten. It is a testament to the fact that even decades later, the search for justice persists, driven by the hope that one day, the final pieces of this long-standing mystery will be put into place, providing closure for a family that has endured ripples of loss for more than half a century. The commitment to honoring Stephanie's memory and seeking the truth continues, as investigators remain open to any information that might shed light on this tragic chapter of Wisconsin history. The mystery surrounding the disappearance of Melissa Casillas remains a haunting puzzle that has fractured a community and left those who love her suspended in a state of perpetual uncertainty. On the afternoon of Thursday, June 26, 2025, the life of Melissa, a devoted mother and administrative assistant at the Los Alamos National Laboratory, took an inexplicable turn in the quiet expanses of Taos County, New Mexico. What began as a routine day for a family deeply entrenched in the rhythms of professional and personal life quickly devolved into a narrative characterized by contradictory accounts, digital shadows, and the profound silence of a woman who seemed to vanish into the high desert air. The circumstances are unsettlingly stark. Melissa's daughter, Sierra, found a family home in a state that suggested an abrupt, yet calculated departure. The white Jetta was in the driveway, the house was locked, and inside, the trappings of Melissa's daily existence, her work phone, her badge, her keys, and a sentimental gold chain sat abandoned on the kitchen table. More concerning to those who knew her temperament was the discovery of her personal cell phones, which had been factory reset, wiped clean of every photograph, text, and memory, as if an attempt had been made to erase a digital footprint entirely. For the Casillas household, led by her husband Mark, the prevailing theory has long been one of voluntary departure. They point to the overwhelming pressure of financial strain, a series of lawsuits, and the weight of professional scrutiny as catalysts that may have pushed Melissa to walk away. They speak of a woman who felt the crushing gravity of mounting debt and perhaps sought a path toward a new, anonymous beginning. This perspective gained traction when video surveillance footage emerged from a residence along Highway 518. At 2:18 in the afternoon, the recording captured Melissa walking alone, purposeful and composed, carrying a backpack. To those who subscribe to this theory, the image is not one of a woman in distress, but of an individual exercising agency, choosing to leave behind the complexities of a life that had become untenable. Conversely, the Mondigan family, Melissa's parents and siblings, view the events through a lens of profound suspicion and grief. They reject the notion that Melissa, a woman they describe as deeply sentimental and tethered to her family, would ever willingly abandon her daughter, Sierra, especially on the cusp of significant life changes. They point to the suspicious tire tracks in the driveway, the fresh mud on hunting boots found in the bedroom, and a presumptive positive test for blood near a fish tank as evidence that points toward a darker, more sinister reality. Their narrative is one of a woman who was controlled, perhaps pushed to the edge, and ultimately lost to circumstances that have yet to be fully accounted for by investigators. The tension between these two perspectives is not merely a difference of opinion. It is a profound schism that has influenced every aspect of the investigation. The Mondigans speak of a husband who was quick to dismiss potential leads, such as a witness sighting of a woman near a blue Dodge truck, while Mark maintains that his actions were a focused effort to find his wife, not a deliberate attempt to obstruct justice. The digital complexities, particularly the total erasure of her iCloud backup, and the resetting of her devices remain the most confounding element. Experts note that such actions require intent and knowledge. Yet, whether that intent belonged to a woman seeking to protect her privacy while starting over, or to an unknown party seeking to sever her connection to the world, remains unknown. Adding layers of complexity are the peripheral mysteries that have emerged in the months since her disappearance. Reports of a mysterious woman who allegedly contacted Sierra with cryptic messages. The bizarre account of a local man claiming to have found a victim in the mountains. And the broader, national discourse surrounding the disappearance of several individuals connected to aerospace and laboratory research have all fed into a climate of speculation, while law enforcement authorities, including Agent Ezekiel Esquivel-Mata, have largely interpreted the available evidence as pointing toward a missing person who may be alive. By choice, the official status of the case remains open. The authorities have classified Melissa as endangered, acknowledging the critical need for her thyroid medication, yet they lack a definitive crime scene or a clear suspect. The tragedy of Melissa Casillas is that she exists in this liminal space between being a woman who chose to reclaim her life and a woman who was stolen from it. For the people who gather at the dinner table, for the daughter who waits for a message that never arrives, and for the extended family that searches the rugged landscape of New Mexico, the agony is found in the lack of an answer. The human spirit is resilient, capable of enduring great hardship, but it is rarely equipped to handle the absence of closure. In a nation that values the sanctity of the home and the strength of the familial bond, the story of Melissa Casillas serves as a sobering reminder of how quickly the foundations of our lives can shift. It is a call to recognize the importance of community and the necessity of truth. Whether Melissa is living in the shadows of a new identity or has met a fate that remains hidden in the mountains, her absence is a void that calls out for resolution. As the investigation continues, the plea remains the same, that the truth, however painful it may be, eventually finds its way into the light, bringing peace to a family that has waited far too long for a sign, a word, or a way home. If anyone possesses information, however small or seemingly insignificant, the New Mexico State Police urge you to come forward, for the sake of a mother who remains missed, and for a family that deserves the dignity of knowing the truth. What aspect of the investigation would you like to explore in greater detail to better understand the challenges the family and investigators are facing? Handle rejection. So she ensured him, she isolated him, and she orchestrated his end. When the truth came out, when the walls of her own construction collapsed, she tried the old I do not remember trick. You have to be kidding me. You do not just forget murdering your husband. She was a monster, plain and simple. She went to prison for life, and for the first time in a long time, the kids could breathe. It is a sad state of affairs when the person who should be your protector becomes your nightmare. But in this line of work, you learn that evil does not always look like a monster. Sometimes it looks like the person sitting across the dinner table. My. You see, people often ask me what evil looks like. They expect a monster with horns, or maybe a man lurking in a dark alleyway waiting to pounce. But the truth is much colder than that. Evil sits at your kitchen table. Evil sleeps in your bed. Evil raises your children. I tell you, the most dangerous predator is the one you trust the most. Let me tell you about the case of Bernie James, a man who served his country in Vietnam, a man who saved lives as a paramedic and a firefighter, a man who just wanted to keep his family together after losing his first wife, and then he met her, Patricia James. You have to be kidding me. That is exactly what you think when you start to peel back the layers of the web of lies she spun. 1987, Wilton Manors, Florida, a quiet place, a bedroom community where people moved to escape the noise. It was a low-crime area. But on March 24th, 1987, at 9:22 in the evening, the silence was shattered by a 911 call. The story they fed us was a robbery A random stranger, a black man looking for matches, a scuffle, a tragic end. But here's the thing about a lie. It is like a house of cards. You keep adding to it, and eventually the foundation cracks. We found Bernie inside his vehicle, slumped over. Blunt force trauma to the head, strangulation. The arrogance of criminals. They always think they are the smartest people in the room. They think if they set the stage, we will just read the script they wrote for us. But they always leave breadcrumbs. The wallet was left behind, rifled through, but not taken. That does not happen in a robbery. The car did not need oil, yet there were oil cans set out as a prop. The blood evidence was not where it should have been. The scene did not match the story. It did not take us long to see the cracks. We looked into her life, the aliases, the scams. She was a master deception. She pretended to be a flight attendant named TJ. She created an imaginary friend named Demi to execute her dark plans. She controlled a man named Tim like a puppet on a string. She played on his sympathy, his isolation, his desire to be a savior. She convinced him that Bernie was a child molester, that Bernie was abusive, that the world would be better off without him. And Timot? He listened. He followed her instructions. He became the instrument of her malice. They discussed grinding up medicine to poison him. They discussed shooting him. Finally, they decided on the most brutal way to end his life. And why? Because Bernie was going to leave. Because she could not handle the rejection. Because she stood to gain from the life insurance policy. She did not love him. She used him. And when he became inconvenient, she threw him away like trash. I tell you, it is a chilling thing to witness. A human being who treats others as tools for their own survival. She had no conscience, no compassion, no remorse. When we caught up to her, she tried to play the victim one last time. She tried to claim she did not remember, tried to conjure up another personality to take the blame. She tried to hide behind a veil of mental instability. But the evidence does not care about your stories. The evidence does not lie. The case was solid. The confession was obtained. The truth came out, as it always does. She was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison. And frankly, that is the only place for a person who can look a man in the eye day after day and plot his end. The world is a dangerous place, and sometimes the most dangerous thing in it is the person you let into your home. You think you know someone? You think you can see their heart? Think again. Because beneath that surface, in the quiet corners of the human mind, there are things hiding that you would rather not imagine. Human nature is a strange thing. I have seen the best of us, and I have seen the absolute worst of us. People kill for the most ridiculous reasons imaginable. Greed, envy, a twisted sense of control. They think they can outsmart the system, outsmart the police, and hide the monster inside. But here's the thing about monsters. They always leave a trail. You just have to be willing to look at it. The case of Bernie James. It takes place in Wilton Manors, Florida. It was 1987. A quiet place, a bedroom community. People moved there to get away from the noise of Fort Lauderdale. It was a place where people thought they were safe. But safety is an illusion, I tell you, especially when you are sleeping next to the enemy. On March 24th, 1987, at 9:22 post-meridium, the call comes in. Adieu situation. 37-year-old Bernie James is found unresponsive in his vehicle. His family pulls him out. They try to perform cardiopulmonary resuscitation. They are shocked. This is not the kind of neighborhood where people get murdered, but the medical evidence does not lie. The man had blunt trauma to the head and ligature marks around his neck. Someone had strangled the life out of him, and I will tell you it was not an accident. When we arrived, we found the wallet strewn about. There was no money, but the cards were there. A stage robbery. You have to be kidding me. In my experience, if you rob someone, you do not inventory their wallet on the driveway. You run. You hide. You get away. This was personal. This was theater. Bernie James was a good man. He was the eldest of 9 children. He was a Marine. He served 2 tours in Vietnam. He was a firefighter and a paramedic. He saved lives. He lost his first wife, Lisa, to an aneurysm. He was left with 3 children under the age of 3. He was a man drowning in grief, looking for a life raft, and he thought he found it in Patty. Patty, a woman with a deep scar on her face. A woman who convinced herself she was hideous, that no one would love her. But Bernie did not see the scar. He saw the person. He married her in 1982. She adopted his children. It seemed like a match made in heaven. But heaven is a long way from reality. As we looked into the scene, things did not add up. The oil cans in the car. The oil dipstick that showed the oil was already full. The lack of blood in the car where the attack allegedly happened. Someone was lying. And it was the wife. She told us she went outside, saw a man talking to Bernie, a man who wanted matches for a cigar. A black male, 6 feet tall, French accent. We searched every house in that neighborhood. Nothing. Nobody saw anything, because that man did not exist. You look at the facts, and the facts do not lie, but people do. We started talking to the family. Bernie's parents. They told us about the verbal screaming matches, the isolation, how Patty forced them to move to Florida and cut them off from their support system, how Bernie wanted to leave, to divorce her. He called his mother, told her he was coming home, but he never made it. Then the story shifts. Patty brings up a name, Timot, a man she met at a bowling alley. She claimed she was abused, that Tim saw it, and that Tim was the one who did it. She claimed she was held in a bathroom while Bernie was killed. It is a story designed to make her look like a victim, not a perpetrator. We brought in Timot. He was soft-spoken, intelligent. He sits down. We show him a picture of Patty, and he asks, "Who is that?" He knows her as Demi. He says he is engaged to a woman named TJ whom he has never met in person. A woman who told him Bernie was an abuser, a child molester, a woman who manipulated him, who whispered in his ear, who planned a murder with him. Demi, TJ, it was all her. It was all Patty. She was creating personas to hide her own tracks. She convinced this man to kill her husband because she was afraid of rejection, afraid of losing control she had built over her little empire. They tried to poison him. They tried to shoot him. Finally, they decided on the garage, the bedroom, the blunt force trauma, and the wire. We brought Tim to his apartment. We used luminol. It lit up like a Christmas tree. There was the blood. There was the truth. He confessed. He told us how he hit him, how he strangled him when he did not go down. Patty, a manipulative con artist. She used her own children in scams. She pretended they were deaf to get money from churches. She isolated them. She starved them of normal childhoods. She was the architect of this tragedy. When she realized the walls were closing in, she tried to play the role of the victim one last time. She claimed she did not remember the murder. She claimed it was her other personality. It was a performance, a bad one. The jury saw through it. In the second trial, she was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison. Justice, in the end, prevailed. But you look at the human cost. 3 children. A father who served his country only to be killed by the woman he trusted. It is a tragedy. A senseless, cold-blooded tragedy. People ask me, why do they do it? Why do they kill? I do not know. I have walked the halls of justice for decades, and I still do not have a simple answer. The human heart is a dark forest. Sometimes, the only thing you can do is find the truth, shine a light on it, and make sure the people responsible pay the price. And that is exactly what we did. My, people are strange creatures. They kill for the most ridiculous reasons you can imagine, and sometimes the monster lives right inside your own home, smiling back at you while sharpening a knife. You have to be kidding me. Bernie James was a good man, a Marine, a firefighter, a paramedic, a father to 3 young children. But he was a man searching for a void to fill after losing his first wife to an aneurysm in 1980. He met Patty, and he thought he found salvation, but he had invited the devil to dinner. On March 24th, 1987, in Wilton Manors, Florida, the police received a call that changed everything. Bernie was found in his vehicle, slumped over, dead from blunt force trauma to the head and strangulation. His wife, Patty, told a tale of a stranger, a black man looking for a cigar match. But in this line of work, we do not believe in fairy tales. The scene was staged. The oil cans were a lie. The wallet was a pathetic attempt at misdirection. We looked at the evidence, and the evidence told us the truth. The car was not where the murder happened, because there was not enough blood in that vehicle for the damage inflicted on the victim. We started digging, and we found a woman who was a hollow shell deceptions. She was not just Patty. She was Demi. She was TJ, a flight attendant who did not exist. She was a professional con artist who turned murder into a collaborative project. She manipulated a man named Timot, convincing him that Bernie was a child molester, convincing him to kill the man she could no longer control because he had the audacity to want a divorce. I tell you, it makes you sick. She used her own children in scams. She isolated them. She played the victim, but she was a hunter. Timot confessed, and he described the blunt trauma and the wires used for strangulation in that apartment. He was a hand, but she was the brain. She tried to plead insanity, claimed the other personalities did it, but the jury was not buying that nonsense. She was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison. A man is dead because he trusted a woman who had no soul. That is the tragedy of it all. You look at these cases, and you see that some people are just predators, and the rest of us are just lucky we did not cross their path. Bernie James deserved better. He deserved a life, not a shallow grave, but in the end, that is all he got, while she sat behind bars, empty and cold, exactly where she belongs. Humans are strange creatures. They kill for the most ridiculous reasons you could ever imagine. Sometimes it is about money. Sometimes it is about power. And sometimes it is simply because they cannot stand the reflection they see in the mirror. Bernie James was a good man, a Marine, a firefighter, a man who dedicated his life to saving others. He had a hole in his life, and he tried to fill it with a woman who turned out to be a bottomless pit of darkness. It happened on March 24th, 1987, in Wilton Manors, Florida, a quiet place. People move there to escape the noise. But you cannot escape the noise when you bring the monster inside your own house. They find Bernie slumped in his car, blunt trauma to the head, ligature marks around his neck. They say he was working on the car. I tell you, you have to be kidding me. Who changes the oil in a car at night without a drop of blood where the killing actually happened? The scene was a theater production, and the director was his wife, Patty. My, the lies they tell. She invents a mysterious man, a man looking for a cigar, a ghost who vanishes into the night. But ghosts do not leave breadcrumbs. We start pulling at the threads. We look at their marriage. It was not a marriage. It was a prison. She isolated him. She scammed churches. She used her children as props in a con. And then we find the accomplice, Timot, a man manipulated by a woman, pretending to be 2 other people. She was Patty. She was Demi. She was a flight attendant named TJ. It was a hall of mirrors designed to hide the fact that she was a bored, greedy, and utterly empty human being. When 37-year-old Bernie decided to leave, she decided he had to go. Life insurance was the payoff, and manipulation was the currency. They plotted. They tried to poison him with apple seeds and pills. They tried to shoot him, but could not find a field. Finally, they settled for a bat and a wire in a bedroom. She thought she was a genius. She thought she could rewrite reality. But reality has a way of showing up at the front door. We got her. She was convicted of first-degree murder. She got life in prison. And frankly, That is exactly where a monster belongs. You ask yourself, how does a person become like that? They do not. They choose to be that way. It is a choice, and she made hers. Human beings are strange creatures. They kill for the most ridiculous reasons you can imagine. My. It never ceases to amaze me what people are capable of when they think nobody is watching. In the late 1980s, Wilton Manor, Florida, was a quiet place. A bedroom community, a low-crime area where people moved to find peace. But peace is a fragile thing, and on March 24th, 1987, at 9:22 post-meridium, the silence was shattered. Bernie James, a 37-year-old firefighter and a man who loved the outdoors, was found dead in his own vehicle. His family found him, slumped over, with blunt force trauma to his head and ligature marks around his neck. You look at a scene like that, and you ask yourself, who will want this man gone? He was the eldest of 9 children, a Marine, a paramedic, a man who protected others. He survived 2 tours in Vietnam, only to be taken out in his own driveway. His wife, Patty James, was there. She spun a yarn about a stranger, a black man looking for matches, a random act of violence. You have to be kidding me. I tell you, criminals always think they are the smartest people in the room. They leave a wallet rifled through right there on the pavement. That is not a robbery. That is a bad play in a theater of lies. We checked the dipstick on the vehicle. It was full. She said he was changing the oil. He did not need an oil change. The inconsistency was glaring. We started digging, and what we found was a snake pit. Bernie was trapped in a marriage that was effectively a cage. He wanted out. He told his mother he was leaving. And then the web of deceit began to unravel. Patty was a master of the con. She lived a double life. No, a triple life. She created characters, made up flight attendants, made up friends. She ensnared a man named Tim Ott, convincing him that Bernie was an abuser, a child molester, a monster. She manipulated Tim into doing the dirty work. They discussed killing him with ground-up seeds, with pills, with anything. Finally, they settled on a brutal end in Tim's apartment. When we brought Tim in, he was confused. He knew her as Demi, not Patricia. He was a pawn in her game. We used chemical analysis on the carpets in his apartment, and we found the truth in the blood. Patty James was not a grieving widow. She was a puppet master. She had him take out life insurance and cut his children out of the benefits. She could not handle the rejection of a divorce, so she ended his life. At the trial, she even tried to pull the personality card, claiming she did not remember. That was her alter ego. That is the oldest trick in the book, and it does not work on me. She was a woman without a conscience, a void where a heart should be. She was convicted, and she spent the rest of her days behind bars. People ask me what the worst part of my job is. It is not the gore. It is the realization that the person sleeping next to you, the one who says they love you, might be the very person waiting for the right moment to extinguish your light. That is the reality of human nature, and it is a dark, dark place. You see, when a person closes the door at night, nobody knows what goes on inside. We try to find the truth. We sift through the lies, and sometimes the monsters are not hiding in the shadows. They are sitting right there in the living room, waiting for their chance. It is a tragedy, plain and simple, but at least in this case, the truth found its way out into the light. Human beings are strange creatures. They kill for the most ridiculous reasons you could ever imagine. My. You think you have seen it all in this line of work. And then a case like the murder of Bernie James comes along to remind you that the darkness in some people is truly bottomless. Bernie James was a good man. He was a Marine. He was a firefighter. He was a man who put on a uniform every day to help folks who were having the worst day of their lives. He lost his first wife to an aneurysm and was left trying to raise 3 little children on his own. He was a protector. Then he met a woman named Patty over the phone. She had a deep scar on her face that made her feel hideous. But Bernie did not care about the outside. He saw a person in need, and he reached out to help. That was his fatal mistake. He brought a predator into his home. They moved to Florida, to the quiet streets of Wilton Manors on March 24th. 1987. A call comes in at 9:22 in the evening. Bernie is found in his car. A blunt force strike, a ligature around the neck. They told us it was a robbery. My. You have to be kidding me. Robbers do not leave wallets behind after rifling through them on the driveway. They run. This was personal. We look at the scene. It does not add up. She says he was changing the oil. The dipstick says the oil is full. She says she saw a man with a French accent. We scour the neighborhood. Nothing. Nobody saw anything. We talk to the family. They say the marriage was a war zone. Screaming matches. He wanted out. Then she starts talking. She gives us a name. Timot. She says they were in a bowling league. We bring the guy in. He looks at her photo and says, I do not know a Patricia. I know a Demi. And then the walls come crashing down. This woman was playing a game of chess while the rest of us were playing checkers. She invented a fictional flight attendant named TJ. She became Demi. She manipulated this Tim out into doing the dirty work for her. They tried to poison him. They tried to shoot him. Finally, they bludgeoned him and strangled him in an apartment. We found the blood with chemical testing. We had the confession. And you know what she did when we caught her? She pulled the oldest trick in the book. She claimed she did not remember. She claimed it was her alter ego, pure evil. That is the only word for it. She did not just kill her husband. She tried to erase the truth and hide behind a mask of mental illness. But in the end, truth has a way of coming out. She got life in prison. A long time to sit and think about the life she destroyed. Bernie James deserved better. They all did. I tell you, some people just should not be allowed to walk among the rest of us. Human beings are strange creatures. They kill for the most ridiculous reasons you could ever imagine. My. You look at a life like that of Bernie James, a man who served his country and dedicated his career to saving others. And you have to ask yourself, how did he end up dead in his own driveway? I tell you, you have to be kidding me. On the 24th of March, 1987, in a quiet bedroom community called Wilton Manors, Florida, this man, 37 years old, met an end that no one could have predicted. His wife, Patty, told a story that sounded like a cheap novel. A mysterious man looking for matches, a conversation, a murder. But let me tell you something about the truth. It has a way of rising to the surface. And the truth in this case was buried under a mountain of lies. Patty James was a woman who lived in the shadows of her own inventions. She had a deep scar, and she let it define her, turning her own insecurity into a weapon to manipulate everyone around her. She played the victim. She played the surrogate mother. She played the grieving wife. But she was a predator. We found the scene, and it did not add up. A wallet rifled through right there on the driveway, but nothing stolen of value. An oil change that never happened because the dipstick showed a full engine. And then there was the mystery of the husband who wanted out. Bernie James had been unhappy. He was planning to leave. And that is a dangerous place to be when you are married to a master deception. We brought in this Timot, a man who did not even know the name Patty James. He knew her as Demi. He knew her as TJ. She was using these different names, these different personas, to pull the strings of a puppet show, and Timot was the one she had convinced to pull the trigger, or rather, to crush the life out of a man who just wanted to leave. It is a terrifying thing, really. When you consider that she could invent an entire person, an entire flight attendant named TJ, just to orchestrate a killing. You look at that life and you realize when a person closes a door at night, nobody knows what goes on inside. She thought she was the smartest person in the room, but she was just another criminal who could not keep her story straight. The evidence did not lie, even if she did. The blood in the apartment, the lack of logic in her alibi, the greed behind the insurance policy. You have to wonder about the capacity for human cruelty. People think murder is a crime of passion, but often it is a crime of convenience, a cold, calculated transaction. She did not want a divorce, so she chose a coffin. You have to be kidding me. In the end, she got exactly what she deserved. A lifetime behind bars to think about the monster she really was. Human beings are strange creatures, and the things they are capable of doing to one another will chill you to the bone. They kill for the most ridiculous reasons you could ever imagine, and sometimes the monsters are the ones sleeping in the bed right next to you. You think you know someone, you share a life, you raise children, and all the while, you're looking at a void. Bernie James was a good man, a firefighter, a paramedic, a man who survived 2 tours in Vietnam only to fall victim to a calculated, cold-blooded scheme in his own driveway in 1987. It happened in Wilton Manors, Florida, a quiet place, or so everyone thought. At 9:22 in the evening, a call comes in, and suddenly a family is shattered. You look at the scene, and your gut tells you something is wrong. The vehicle is there. The seat is fully reclined. The scene is too perfect, too staged. And the wife, Patty, she has a story. She says she saw a stranger, a man looking for matches. I tell you, in my line of work, the first story you hear is usually a work of fiction. When you look at the evidence, the blood, the trauma, the missing logic, it does not add up. A man doing an oil change with a full tank? You have to be kidding me. She played the part of the grieving widow, but underneath that, she was pulling strings like a puppeteer. She was not just Patty. She was Demi. She was this made-up person called TJ. She manipulated a man named Tim Ott, a pawn in her sick game, to do the heavy lifting while she sat back and watched the chaos unfold. She isolated those children, used them for scams, built a wall around that house, so no one could see the rot inside. When the walls closed in, she tried the oldest trick in the book, the split personality defense. I do not remember. I am not responsible. It is all a lie. She wanted him gone because he was leaving, and she could not handle being alone, or perhaps it was just the insurance money. In the end, she got exactly what she deserved. She was a master of deception, but she could not deceive the truth forever. People talk about evil as if it is some abstract concept, but I have seen it. I have looked it in the eye. I have sat in that interrogation room and watched the mask slip. She went from pretending to be a flight attendant to pretending she was someone else entirely, all while keeping that man, Bernie, on a leash until she decided to cut it. You have to be kidding me. Thinking you can outsmart a seasoned investigator with such clumsy, pathetic lies. She was a con artist, a manipulator who used everyone, even her own children, for her own sick gain. When I think about those kids growing up in a house of secrets, never knowing when the next lie was coming, it breaks my heart. You never know what goes on behind closed doors at night, but rest assured, the truth always has a way of coming out into the light. And when it does, it is usually not pretty. It is cold, it is calculated, and it is entirely without mercy. That is the nature of the beast, and it is why we do what we do. We find the truth, we close the book, and we hope, just maybe, that justice brings some measure of peace to those left behind. Human beings are strange creatures. I tell you, they kill for the most ridiculous reasons you can imagine, dragging everyone else into their pathetic little dramas. You have to be kidding me. You look at a man like Bernie James, a Marine, a firefighter, a paramedic, a man who dedicated his life to protecting others, and you think to yourself, how does a man like that end up dead on his own driveway? It was March 24th, 1987, in Wilton Manors, Florida, a quiet place where people went to hide from the noise of the world. But you cannot hide from evil when it is sitting right at your dinner table. Bernie was 37 years old, a father of 3, a man looking for love after tragedy struck his first marriage. He found Patty, or at least he thought he did. He saw a beautiful soul behind a physical scar, but he missed a monster lurking beneath. You close the door at night. Nobody knows what goes on inside, and behind those doors, Patty was spinning a web. When we found Bernie, the scene was staged. You have a vehicle with the passenger seat reclined, oil cans out, but the engine was fine. A wallet tossed on the ground, rifled through, yet the cards were inside. You have to be kidding me. That is not a robbery. That is a bad performance. Patty tried to tell us about some mysterious stranger, a man in his 20s with a French accent. But the truth is usually much closer to home. She was pretending to be people who did not even exist. Demi, T.J., made-up flight attendants, imaginary friends, all to manipulate a man named Tim out into doing her dirty work. She played him like a fiddle. She convinced this man that Bernie was an abuser, a child molester, and they discussed grinding up seeds, baking them into cakes, anything to get rid of a man who was finally planning to leave her. The arrogance of it all. They finally settled on violence, and Timot, in his own twisted devotion to a woman he barely knew, did the deed. He beat Bernie and strangled him, and then they moved him to the car. We found the blood in the apartment with luminol, clear as day. It did not happen on that lawn. It happened in a bedroom, far away from the life Bernie thought he had built. She was a con artist, plain and simple, looking for a payday with insurance policies and sympathy, isolating those children, using them as props in her scams. When we finally put the cuffs on her at the school, she still tried to play the victim, claiming she was a different person, that she did not remember a thing. I tell you, that is the oldest trick in the book. You are responsible for the life you take, and you cannot hide behind an imaginary friend. She was convicted, and justice finally caught up to her, but you cannot help but look at those 3 children and wonder what kind of damage is left when the person who is supposed to love you is the one who destroys everything you hold dear. Evil does not wear a mask. It wears a face you think you know. Human beings are strange creatures. They kill for reasons so trivial, so pathetic, you would not believe it if you saw in a script. You have to be kidding me. You think you know what goes on behind closed doors. But let me tell you, you have no idea. Take the case of Bernie James. March 24th, 1987. Wilton Manors, Florida. A quiet place, a bedroom community. Bernie was a good man. A Marine, a firefighter, a paramedic. He saved lives. He served his country. And yet, there he was, dead in his own vehicle, found by his own wife, Patty. It is a tragedy, I tell you. A total waste of a life. When we arrived on the scene, things did not add up. They never do. You see a body, you see a story. Patty told us this tale about an oil change, a black man looking for matches, a stranger in the night. It was a fairy tale, and I hate fairy tales. We found the wallet, rifled through, tossed on the ground. But the credit cards and identification were there. That is not a robbery. That is a signature of a setup. You do not inventory your loot at the crime scene. You run. We look closer. The victim had blunt trauma to the head, right side, over the ear, ligature marks around the neck. He was strangled, and it could not have happened in the car. There was no space, and the blood evidence did not match. It was a stage play, and Patty was a director. We dug into their lives. A marriage built on need, not love. She isolated him. She drove a wedge between him and his family. She was a master of deception. She invented people. She was not just Patty. She was Demi. She was this made-up flight attendant called TJ. She played these people like a fiddle. And then there was Timot. Poor, gullible Tim. He thought he was saving her from an abuser. He thought he was a hero. He was a murderer, used by a woman with no conscience, no compassion, no remorse. She had him commit the crime, and then she acted like she did not remember a thing. It is evil. Pure, unadulterated evil. She wanted the life insurance. She wanted to keep control. She was a parasite. When they finally put her in handcuffs at the school, she still tried to play the victim, saying she had another personality. You have to be kidding me. In the end, the jury saw through the mask. She was convicted of first-degree murder and sent to prison for life. That is where she belongs. Bernie James deserved better. He deserved a life, not an ending written by a monster. The world is full of these people, folks. They smile to your face, they take your hand, and all the while, they are sharpening the knife behind their back. Watch who you let into your home. Watch who you trust. Because sometimes, the person closest to you is the one you should be afraid of the most. You know, human beings are strange creatures. They kill for the most ridiculous reasons imaginable, and they wear masks so perfect. You might spend a lifetime thinking you know the person sitting across the dinner table from you, when in reality, you are looking into the eyes of a monster. I tell you, it is a sobering thought to realize that the person you trust most in this world might be the one, sharpening the blade in the dark. We are talking about Bernie James. He was a good man, a Marine, a firefighter, a man who dedicated his life to the service of others. He lost his first wife to a tragedy, and he was left with 3 small children to raise on his own. He was desperate for a partner, for a mother figure for those kids. And then he met Patty. She came with a sad story, a deep physical scar that she claimed to find her life, and a need for love that seemed to match his own. You have to be kidding me if you think that a simple scar tells you everything about a person. It was March 24th, 1987, in the quiet, peaceful community of Wilton Manors, Florida. That place was usually sleepy, the kind of town where people went to escape the noise. But on that night, at 9:22 post-meridium, the silence was shattered by a desperate call to 911. Bernie James was found by his wife in his vehicle, lifeless. The scene was staged, or at least that is what it looked like to a trained eye. Blunt trauma to the head, ligature marks around the neck, an orchestrated tragedy. Patty told a story about a mysterious black man looking for matches, a story that felt like it was plucked straight from a bad novel. She said she went back into the house, and when she returned, Bernie was dead. The wallet was discarded, rifled through, but the credit cards remained. In my experience, that is not a robbery. That is a performance. I tell you, criminals are rarely as clever as they think they are. The medical examiner told us the truth that the scene could not. Bernie did not die in that car. The physics did not add up. The blood patterns were wrong. And the oil change story was a lie because the dipstick showed the oil was full. We started digging, and the deeper we went, the more the mask slipped. We found out about the marital strife, the yelling, the screaming, the constant chaos. We found a letter, supposedly from Bernie. That did not sound like him at all. And then we pulled on the thread of the person named Timot. Patty had spun a web of deception so complex it would make your head spin. She was not just Patty. She was Demi. She was TJ, an imaginary flight attendant. She played Timot like a fiddle, convincing him that Bernie was a child molester, a danger to everyone. She manipulated a man she barely knew into committing a brutal murder. She used her own children as props, faking their disabilities to scam churches, to squeeze money out of the unsuspecting. It makes you sick, does it not? We finally got Timot, and he confessed to the whole ugly business. He admitted to the violence, to the plotting, to the cold, calculated execution. He was just a pawn in Patty's game. When we confronted her, her demeanor was chilling. She claimed she could not remember, that she had multiple personalities, that it was not her, it was TJ. You have to be kidding me. She was a master of the con, a woman who saw control above all else. When Bernie finally realized what she was and tried to leave her, she could not handle the rejection. That was her 3rd marriage, and she was not about to let it end like that. She had him take out a life insurance policy and made sure she was the only beneficiary. It was all about money and control. She was eventually convicted and sentenced to life in prison. A woman with no conscience, no remorse, pure evil in a suburban package. People often ask me if I believe in evil, and I tell them, look at cases like this. When someone can dispose of a human life as if they were taking out the trash, when they can smile to your face while planning your demise, You are looking at the darkness of the human heart. It is a cold, hard world, and sometimes the monster lives right next door. Human beings are strange creatures. They kill for the most ridiculous reasons you could ever conjure up. I tell you, after 30 years in the business, you learn that the person you share your bed with is often the greatest stranger you will ever meet. Bernie James was a good man. He was a protector. He was a man who went to Vietnam, served his country, became a firefighter, a paramedic, a man dedicated to saving lives. But none of that mattered to the monster he brought into his home. It was March 24th, 1987, in the quiet community of Wilton Manors, Florida. A call came into 911 at 9:22 in the evening. A dead man in his car. My. You see, the wife, 36-year-old Patty James, she had a story. She always had a story. She told us she found him there, slumped over, with the seat reclined. She told us he was working on his car, doing an oil change, and that he had been approached by some mysterious man, a man in his 20s, 6 feet tall, with a French accent, looking for a light for a cigar. You have to be kidding me. In my line of work, we call that a fairy tale. We looked at the scene, and it was screaming that something was wrong. There was blood on the right side of the head, trauma, ligature marks on the neck. It was not a robbery. No thief in the history of crime stops to inventory a wallet and leave the credit card scattered about just a few feet away. That is not how it works. That is a performance. We started digging, and the deeper we went, the more the mask slipped. This woman, this Patty, she was a professional grifter. She had made a living out of scamming people, out of lawsuits, out of deception. She had even convinced her own children that their brother was deaf just to fleece churches out of money. It is hard to believe, but I've seen it all. She had isolated Bernie, pull him away from his family, away from his parents, away from his own life. She was a parasite. And when Bernie finally grew a spine, when he finally told his parents he was coming home, when he decided he was going to divorce her, she realized the gravy train was about to jump the tracks. She could not handle rejection. This would have been her third divorce. That is a wound to the ego, and for a narcissist, that is fatal. So she cooked up a plot. She did not act alone, but she was a puppeteer. She created alter egos. She pretended to be a flight attendant named TJ. She pretended to be a woman named Demi. She created these characters to lure a man named Tim Ott into her service. Tim was a pawn, a man who fell for a voice on the phone, a man who never even met the woman he thought he loved. They talked about killing Bernie. They debated poison. They debated guns, and eventually they chose the brutality of a blunt object and a wire. They lured him to the apartment. They took his life. And then they drove him back to his home to stage the scene. They thought they were smart. They thought they were invisible. But the truth is always there, waiting in the shadows. When we brought Tim Ott in, he broke. He told us everything. He showed us the blood they missed in the carpet. He showed us the reality of the situation. And when we confronted Patty, she did what all cowards do. She retreated into her delusions. She looked at us and said she did not remember. She claimed she was not there. She claimed it was her alter ego, TJ, who did it. You have to be kidding me. You look into the eyes of someone like that, and you see the void. There is no remorse. There is no humanity. She was a woman who used her own children as props in a stage play of lies. She was a woman who saw people only as tools to be used or obstacles to be removed. In the end, the jury saw through the charade. They sent her away for life. She deserved every second of it. We are not just talking about a murder here. We are talking about the destruction of a soul, the systematic dismantling of a man who just wanted to be loved. It is a tragedy, sure, but it is also a warning. When you close your door at night, when you build a life with someone, you better be sure you know who is standing on the other side of that threshold. Because sometimes the monster does not live under the bed. The monster is in the kitchen, pouring your coffee and planning your funeral. It is a cold world, and we are just here to clear away the debris. My, you have to be kidding me. Human beings are strange creatures. They kill for the most ridiculous reasons you can imagine. They believe they are playing a game of chess. But they do not realize they're just pawns on the board. And in the end, the truth always wins. I tell you, Wilton Manors in Florida in 1987 was a quiet bedroom community. The kind of place where you leave your door unlocked. But on March 24th, 1987, at 9:22 post-meridian, that quiet was shattered. Bernie James, a 37-year-old firefighter and paramedic, was found dead in his vehicle. The scene was staged. The passenger seat was reclined, and he was slumped over, but something was wrong. My gut told me immediately that this was not a robbery gone wrong. The wallet was rifled through, but the credit cards were still there. Who commits a robbery and leaves the most valuable items behind? It is a classic sign of someone trying to create a narrative that simply does not fit reality. Then there is the wife, Patty. She tells us she saw a black man with a French accent who was looking for matches to light a cigar. A man who supposedly stood 6 feet tall. We checked. We searched. No one saw a thing. That is because he did not exist. The scene inside the car was too clean. There was not enough blood for the trauma Bernie sustained. It did not happen there. The oil change story? A fabrication. The dipstick was full. People lie to the police every day, and they think they are clever, but they are not. They are just desperate. And then we have the accomplice. Timot. This man, a pawn in her twisted game, eventually broke down and confessed. He revealed that Patty was not just Patty. She was Demi. She was TJ. She was a master deception. A chameleon who wore different masks to manipulate the people around her. She had manipulated this man into believing he was saving her from an abusive husband. But the truth was much darker. She was a woman who could not handle rejection, a woman who had already been married twice before, and who had taken out a life insurance policy on her husband with his own children excluded. She was a vulture. The manipulation of her children, the scam with the deaf child, the absolute lack of remorse. She thought she could hide behind the masks, but the evidence, the blood in the bedroom where the murder actually occurred, the medical evidence, it all painted a picture of a cold-blooded killer. When the law finally caught up to her, she had the gall to act like the victim, to claim she could not remember, that it was her other personality. I have seen many things in my career, but the audacity of someone to create an entire fictional universe just to cover up a murder for money? It is chilling. You have to be kidding me. She deserved every single day of that life sentence.